Hi, this is Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and Tellington Tea Touch practitioner for animals and people. This is Tristan in his necktie. Show off that tie, this. There you go. And he's a Corgi, and this is episode 156 of Conversations with a Corgi. And we have an update on the moose. It's getting a little gamey, stinky in the backyard. And I have never been so happy in my life to see turkey vultures and buzzards coming in. I have black vultures and turkey vultures. They're huge. At first, I thought some of them were eagles, but they don't flock like this. And I just can't pray for enough of them to be here because that moose is pretty stinky. So, and I keep thinking of back to an early episode of Conversations with a Corgi, where we talked about prayers for roadkill. And one of the things you can say when you pass something smashed in the road, and at this time of year there's tons of squirrels and chipmunks trying to gather acorns that don't make it, and you say, bless this spirit, keep it safe in its next life, protect those who use this body for food. And boy, I've been saying that a lot because that moose is so diseased, and I want to make sure that that disease does not get carried and spread around. Apparently what he has is indeed for sure brainworms, and they are transmitted to deer from a snail, which I guess we have an endangered snail actually, the striped mollusk or something that lives around here. And so there's plenty of them, and in wet moist years like this the deer ingest them, and these brainworms go into the deer, and the deer have developed an immunity. Really, they don't get that sick. So, but what happens is it's in their urine and their poopies, and it gets spread to the mooses. And this didn't used to be such a problem, but because of global warming, the deer population is moving further north, and the moose population and the deer population are intermingling. We used to have kind of a pretty strict line across the country where it was moose in the north and deer in the south, because deer are not really able to withstand a really hard winter, and mooses are built for winter. So anyway, that's what happened to my moose. It's really sad. A couple of my friends have suggested getting a bag of lime. I'd like to make sure that anybody who can get food here can do that before I start liming things, but I certainly will be applying lime at some point. And I'm really glad I'm going away this weekend to Virginia to work with the wonderful Linda Tellington. We are doing a horse clinic for 2 days at a place called Ride On Ranch. It's a therapeutic riding center in Lovettsville, Virginia. It's near Leesburg. And I will be there all of Saturday and part of Sunday. And it's a great opportunity for anyone with a horse or with an interest in horses, or even if you just want to learn T-Touch for your own personal use, for your pets or yourself or your friends. It's a great learning opportunity. There are always horses there that are calm and willing to let beginners learn on them. And so if you just want to learn T-Touch for your cat, don't be afraid to go to a horse clinic if there's an opening in your area. And I don't know if this class is completely full. Certainly there's always room for auditors and people who come just to observe, and you can practice the touches on yourself and learn a lot from watching. And you can see, with such a big animal as a horse, you can immediately see huge changes that are really impressive and inspire you to do this work with your guinea pig, who you might not see such big changes with right away. So today we're going to talk a little bit about homeopathy as we continue our look at many of the alternative / complementary / holistic therapies that were poo-pooed by Wikipedia. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about homeopathy. And homeopathy was really developed in the British Isles and in Europe, and it is the idea of like curing like, which is a similar idea in Chinese medicine. Are you watching the buzzards out the back there, Mr. Corgi? There are a lot of them. There cannot be too many. Anyway, so in homeopathy, for instance, the classic example is if you're allergic to bee stings, you take a tiny, tiny amount, like literally practically molecules of the venom of the bee, and dilute it and dilute it and dilute it, and you come up with something that will just provoke your immune system to improve your ability to respond effectively when you have got a real bee sting. And I I don't know that they've developed homeopathy for peanut butter allergies, but I know that there are some therapies developed where children are exposed who are allergic to peanut butter to tiny, tiny, tiny bits. I don't think it's the dilute amount that you get in homeopathy, but they are in fact helping kids get over their allergies to peanuts, because peanuts and peanut oil are in so many things. It's really not easy to be allergic to nuts. And so developing a treatment for that is really a priority for a lot of people. So in homeopathy, you have often these tiny little round pellets that are just a tiny amount of what is in them. For instance, there's one called Nox Vomica, which is to help you with nausea, and there's just tiny, tiny, tiny amounts of what you need in there, and they're in these little round sugar pills, and your homeopath will direct you to take just, a few of them, 2 or 3 pellets, and you put them under your tongue so that they dissolve and go immediately into your bloodstream. And with your animals, you can do this too. I have had horses, when we don't know what to give them, we hold out 2, 1 in each hand, and the horse will go to the one he needs, and then when you give him a few pellets from it, he will gobble it right down, or chew on it a little bit. There's such tiny pellets, and a horse is a big animal. But even my Corgi, I've been able to give him a few pellets under his tongue, and he doesn't spit them out. They dissolve fairly readily, and so you are able to have a good effect with homeopathy pretty quickly. If you have a tiny animal, like a sick guinea pig or a hamster or a bunny, you can get some distilled or filtered water, put a couple of the pellets in there in just a tiny drop of water, and use an eyedropper and squirt it into their mouth, and they'll lick it, and it doesn't taste bad. So homeopathy has been around certainly throughout the 1900s and up until this century. Some study in Germany was done in the last couple of years that allegedly proved that homeopathy was just the placebo effect. But there have been other studies on homeopathy that have said that it is indeed effective. And whether they're a double-blind, third-party type test, I don't know. But you know what? I have used homeopathy for years with my animals and myself, and it certainly is effective. So I'm not going to stop using it. So I have some examples here of products that I love that are homeopathic products. One is this product, Tramiel. And Tramiel contains quite a few things which I can't read because I'm half blind now. It has a list of ingredients that long of some things that are in it that are anti-inflammatories. And it says that it's for muscular pain, joint pain, sports injuries, and bruising. And the original company, Tramiel, there's a new company, made it in a cream, an ointment, and a pill, and I think it's even in the tiny little round capsules it came in. Oh, and it also is in a tincture in case you need it in a liquid form. So Tramiel, my first introduction to Tramiel, I had a massive injury to my ankle on my left foot. You really like those buzzards. Years ago, in like 2000, and I was at a Linda Tellington horse training in Florida, and my friend Pam Weinbeer, hi Pam, was there, and she said, Sally, you have to put this Tramiel on your ankle. It's really going to help. And I don't know what I'd been using, but my ankle had a lot of problems. And it was so tender still. 3 years later, 4 years, maybe even 6 years later, probably only 4 years later. But I just really did not want to put anything on my ankle. I was so fearful of what would happen. And Pam literally sat on me and smeared it on the side of my ankle where the pain and injury was. And it kind of got really intense for a minute, less than a minute, maybe 30 seconds. And then the pain just dissipated and dissipated. And I put Tramiel on that ankle several times a day, morning, noon, and night, literally, for a couple of years. And, part of it is that it releases the emotional trauma and the guarding. I had been so protective of that ankle for so long because I wouldn't let them put a cast on it so that it was easier for people to treat it and work with it. So I had to be super protective of it. When you have a cast on, you can kind of drag your leg around and it can run into things and not too much effect on you. But I couldn't do that. And so there was a lot of trauma, and the initial injury was a tremendous trauma. So Tramiel was exactly what I needed. It released the emotional and physical and structural and spiritual aspects of that injury. It was super effective. So imagine my sadness when Tramiel got sold to another company. And now what we have is this tea relief, which also comes in a cream and an ointment and a tincture and pills that look like little aspirins. And tea relief says it's a natural medicine, or 33 natural medicines for deep, safe relief. And so it has 33 ingredients. Pretty much it's the exact same thing as Tramiel. There's some debate on the internet whether it's exactly as good or as effective, but I have found that it's just as good. I've had no issues with it. And I have used Tramiel to treat headaches. You know, when you have terrible headaches and you use a lot of aspirin, the headaches actually adapt to the aspirin or the Excedrin or whatever you're taking, and you'll get more intense headaches over time. So what I started using Tramiel, and I was taking it, I think you're supposed to, like an aspirin, take one every 4 hours. I think when I had terrible headaches, I was taking one every 3 hours. And what a relief. I mean, Tramiel changed my life. Nothing had ever helped my headaches as much as Tramiel, because again, I had 2 broken collarbones and some neck issues from horses. And so my headaches were really coming from trauma to my body. And Tramiel is exactly what I needed. It was also super effective when I was getting chemotherapy. That's one of the reasons I wanted to work with a naturopath and or a homeopath during chemo, was so I would be sure that I could take it and it wouldn't interfere with the effective chemotherapy and radiation. And in fact, the Tramiel helped me tremendously. I was so happy when I came back from a chemo treatment and could take some Tramiel and rest, and within a couple of hours I felt pretty good. So Tramiel for me really helps keep my body in balance and in homeostasis. So it's a super powerful homeopathic thing for me. Some other things that you might be familiar with, and now lots of people know about Tramiel, it's been out for a while, are the flower essences. Flower essences, which we had a whole series about, and I encourage you to see them if you haven't, on the back Conversations with a Corgi on YouTube. Flower essences were developed by Bach primarily, and now other people are making them. And his most famous one is this one, the Rescue Remedy. This is the spray version, and it has many flower essences in it, which I have a whole Conversations with a Corgi about, maybe around number 80, about Rescue Remedy. And Rescue Remedy is something that I had, luckily, when I first had that accident, because it does take some of the trauma and the emotional pain out of your initial injury. And it comes in a cream, it comes in a dropper like this, it comes in an alcohol base and a water base. So if you're using this with animals, be sure to get the water-based one. And then it comes in this spray, which is nice because you can spray it in your mouth and it'll go into your body quickly through all the mucous membranes in your mouth. And you can spray it on your dog's tongue or on a carrot and give it to your rabbit or your horse. And you can spray it on your kitty, even on their paw, and they'll lick it off. So I find Rescue Remedy really useful. It's more effective, for instance, if your dog has a problem with thunderstorms, to start giving it to them before the thunderstorm, like hours before, under a couple of hours, and give them another dose. Or if you know that your dog or your cat has trouble traveling, give it to them before you go for the trip. With horses, it's nice to give it to them again before you go for the trip, or if they have to move pastures, or at the time of year when they make that switch from being out at night to out during the day, which we do from the spring and the summer into the fall and winter. Again, anytime you're making a change like that in an animal's life, Rescue Remedy can really help kind of make that okay and make them calm and less stressed during that transition. So Rescue Remedy can be really useful. And certainly Tramiel or Tea Relief and Rescue Remedy are two of the first things I have in my medicine kit for my animals, as well as tea touches. So other things that are homeopathic, as I said, are flower essences. This one's Sibling Rivalry from Botanical Animal. And again, it's very dilute flower water that has been diluted and diluted so that the properties of that flower are preserved and then diluted so that you can absorb them easily, and they are super effective. Now I have a client who's now using one of the anxiety Botanical Animal flower essences, and it was about a week, and she said, "Why isn't it working?" And part of it was the anxiety in her dog's life kept changing and shifting and getting worse. But you do need to use it for like a month, because these changes are subtle and they take a long time, kind of a long time to work. When you think about a 7-year-old dog that's been developing anxiety their whole life, you know, even if it works in a month, that's sort of a miracle because you are combating something from years and years. And it's important to use the right flower essence. That also can matter a lot. But they are really effective. I have used sibling rivalry with my boys when Comet was old and Tristan was young. And I used it earlier when I had Comet and Winnie. And I've used it pretty effectively with horses, with issues with other horses. And so I can speak to the effectiveness of these things. And there are many homeopaths for people around the country. They are treated differently in different states. There's different laws about what they can and cannot do. And it takes a lot of years to study classical homeopathy. And one of the things that they do for people and animals is give you a constitutional remedy. They'll look at the whole big picture, again, that idea of holistic health, and create a remedy specially formulated for you or for that animal that will address all of their problems, or many of them, and get to the root cause. That's the great thing about homeopathy. We're looking at the root cause. We're not just treating the symptom. And so you'll take that constitutional remedy for a certain period of time. And during that time, you have to stay away from things like caffeine and mint, anything that has strong properties that can counteract the effect of the homeopathic treatment. So in my area, because there's so many homeopaths, there's so many body workers in this area, and we're very liberal here, you know, people will routinely ask you, even when you go in for a doctor visit, are you taking any homeopathic remedies right now? Because that will affect what they do for you and whether or not you can take antibiotics and which ones. So it's really part of complementary medicine. It is part of what you can do to help your dog. Certainly, I encourage everyone to have Tea Relief, which was Tramiel, in their medicine kit for their pets, because anytime your dog just like has a fall down the stairs or gets tumbled by another dog or seems to have played too hard, or if they're old and they have arthritis, one Tramiel in their dinner at night, or you can give it to them under their tongue and they might spit it out and lick it, but I like to put something on it like tuna juice to encourage them to chew on it a little bit, or some other meat juice. Being a vegetarian, we don't have a lot of meat juice in this house, and even just any kind of soup and put it in it, the dog will usually eat it, right, Tristan? But it can be really super helpful just when you've got those aches and pains. When it snows here, I have a short dog and he has to leap and leap through the snow, and it can create some inflammation in his joints and his spine, having to run like a dolphin. And he loves the snow. He loves to play in the snow because he's a hot dog and he likes being cool. But the Tramiel can be really helpful as a little nighttime muscle strain relief. So I really think it's really important if you've got a dog that's doing any kind of athletic thing, a fly ball, rally, agility, dog dancing, frisbee, or just being really active and playing with the kids. That can really also wear a dog out. So Tramiel can be really useful. And you can use it while your dog is taking many things. Unlike a constitutional homeopathic remedy, these things like the rescue remedy and the Tramiel are pretty stable. And so it's not the best idea to brush your teeth right after you took a Tramiel or right before you took a Tramiel because of the mint in the toothpaste, but it will still work. It just might not be as effective as it would be if you waited a while. And certainly people don't stop drinking coffee or tea or chocolate just because they are taking Tramiel. So it can be really great. Of course, we don't have to worry about that with our pets. And again, make sure that when you're buying Rescue Remedy and some of these other things that you are getting the water-based one when you're providing it to your pets, because the alcohol-based one can really be hard on their livers. And if you've got an old dog with liver issues, or if your dog's been on other kinds of medications, the last thing you want to do is compromise the liver further by giving them an alcohol-based remedy. And so a lot of these actually have a line that is specifically for pets, and those are all water-based. So that's just a glance at homeopathy and how you might use it for your pet. Certainly for me, it's part of my dog's normal routine whenever he's a little worn out muscularly. And you can get really good results with a lot of these other flower essences and other homeopathic treatments. With horses, we give them Leadum after they have their shots and before they have their shots, and that helps them process the shot and not have a reaction, because now we're giving them 3 shots in one. And there are other homeopathic remedies that you can look up. And you can find a homeopath in your area. A lot of people who are people homeopaths will work with pets also, or they'll know someone who works with pets who they can call. And you can also do a lot of homeopathic work over the internet, so you don't necessarily have to have someone right in your area. So homeopathy can be an important part of your pet's health and wellness program. And certainly there are many vets that are also trained in homeopathy, and it's nice when you can find one of them in your area. Again, remember, homeopathy is very helpful, but I certainly wouldn't have treated myself only with homeopathy when I had something as big as cancer. So if your dog's been hit by a car, don't just give him homeopathy. Make sure he gets into a vet for a thorough evaluation. And if your dog is limping, even after you give him the Traumeel, like overnight and the next morning, he's going to need an evaluation by a vet or someone who can really look at him orthopedically and make sure he's okay. But it is a really safe pain relief, anti-inflammatory type thing. A lot of dogs going through chemotherapy are taking T relief now. And anytime your dog is really stressed with Lyme disease or something like that, systemic diseases, T relief can be good. When my horse, one of my horse clients had EPM, we were giving him T relief and rubbing Traumeel on some of his worst joints in his hind legs. And it can be really effective for things like that because it is subtle and it does help strengthen the immune system to combat what's going on with your animal. So again, that's a quick look at homeopathy and how and when you might want to seek it for your pet. I think it should be something that you look into even if you're not using it right now, because certainly for seniors it can be super helpful. And it's easier to find a way to give homeopathy treatments to your pet than it is always to find a chiropractor or an acupuncturist. And homeopathy is something that you can do with your pet. And there are many people trained in homeopathy across this country, and there's a couple of different associations. So it shouldn't be too hard if you want to work with homeopathy for your pet to find somebody who can help you. And a lot of kind of systemic imbalance can be treated effectively with homeopathy, and that includes systemic imbalance that creates behavior issues as well, hence the flower essences. So this has been Sally Morgan and Tristan Corgi for another episode of Conversations with a Corgi, where we talked a little bit about what is homeopathy and when you might want to use it with your pets or horses. Biscuit. You want to watch those buzzards? The turkey vultures are huge. They're bigger than turkeys. Big birds. Biscuits in his tie. We'll see you back here again on Thursday because we'll be at our job as educators tomorrow. Right, Tristan? He's wearing his cute tie. He says, it's a little crooked, Mom. There we go. Have a great day, everyone. Enjoy the sunshine. We'll see you soon.